Hey, welcome to a new series, which I'm going to call Docker. Maybe learn Docker and then move on to Kubernetes. But I plan on this being a very long series and starting almost at step zero. Step zero would be walking you through installing the OS. I'm going to assume you have an OS that can run Docker. So, what OS can run Docker? Well, Windows 10, 64-bit, Pro, Enterprise, or Education. It also runs on Windows 2016 and 19. You can also run it in Azure if you choose an Azure VM that can run nested virtualization. If you run it on your own machine, make sure you have Hyper-V and containers feature. Windows features must be enabled. Obviously, if you're going to install a 64-bit OS, you need a 64-bit processor, at least 4 gigs of RAM, and then BIOS level hardware virtualization support must be enabled in the BIOS settings. All right, so we're going to start off by running the Docker installer. And I happen to have that in my downloads folder right here. And I also have Hyper-V ready enabled on my Windows system. And let me show you where you could do that. If you're not sure, you can see where I went. Then I checked right here, and that turns on all these settings here. So there we go. All right, so let's go ahead and double click on Docker install. I don't plan on pausing the video during installation because then you can see and compare your time to my time. And if by some chance mine gets done and 15 minutes later you're still going, there's a possibility things aren't working out for you. I'm going to uncheck this. My understanding is if this is, you can use Hyper-V or you can use this feature. I'm going to use Hyper-V instead. And I'm going to have the install add a shortcut to add a shortcut to my desktop for Docker. So we'll say OK. If you didn't want to use Hyper-V and use that as your virtual manager, feel free to keep that checked. You might be thinking to yourself, and if you're new to this, just what's the benefit of Docker going into the world? And there's a lot of videos about that. Oh, there we go. Close. So we'll say close. And is it starting? No. So maybe we'll double click on it. You may be asked to reboot as restart. I wasn't, but I believe sometimes you will. So I'll click on my desktop. And you scroll down the bottom here. Hopefully we'll start. Oh, there we see our little whale, and the desktop is starting. It's giving me a message here about WSL 2 is not installed. That's correct. And we're going to use Hyper-V instead. And it says, hey, you sure you want to use Hyper-V? Because your system supports WSL. I don't want to use WSL. So I'm going to say not now. And now we got Docker starting. And notice it's starting the Linux containers. And we'll talk a little more about that later on. But for now, don't be worried. And you can see it's starting. Once we see these little graph bars stop starting, we'll be good. But yeah, what is the key benefit of Docker? Well, it allows you to package an application and all its dependencies into a standardized unit, like a container. And this is really great because that means you can move them around easily from machine to machine, whereas opposed to olden way to do it, you had the OS, and in a really old way, you do physical machines. You had to install a new physical machine, install the OS, install all the software, all this prerequisite software to install the app, and just kind of hope you didn't miss a step. Then we had the VMs, and yes, it's easier for VMs to move around. But on the VMs, there's a lot of overhead because you're installing the OS over and over and over again, all that memory. Here, you're using just the software. So much less overhead, much easier to move around. And containers really, really are great. And they're really growing in popularity. And of course, they use a fraction of the computing power. And it's much easier to scale. You could just, if you need more, you could break it up now. Now, we're running. So let's get started here. Docker desktop is running. Open Powershell and start hacking. All right, so we're going to minimize that. Go to our PowerShell, P-O-W. Here it is. Can I get as administrator? Yes, I can. And now we're going to make sure our Docker is installed correctly. And a very popular way of doing that, I'm going to get rid of this. I like a little more screen real estate, is to run Docker run. And don't worry, if you've never heard of Docker run, we'll talk in depth about all this stuff, but we just want to make sure everything is working. Docker run. This is going to test our installation. And we'll click here. And what should happen is, notice I didn't find this image locally. So it went and pulled it down. And it looks like hello from Docker. So it looks like my installation is running very, very well, which is outstanding. Okay, now we're going to test our machine with a little more commands. And we're going to use BusyBox, which is a popular application. So we're gonna first we want to do is run docker pool busybox. So let's run that. Let's clear our screen down here. And I'm actually going to change directories to. I'm going to actually come out here, and I'm going to go to my C drive. Say new folder, Docker Labs. That should be okay. I'm going to change that here. So all my files. Will go in this folder. All right, now we're ready. All right, so Docker pull busybox. Let's run that. Excellent. We went and it looks like everything worked very well, so that's good. Now what happened here was the pull command fetches the busybox image from the Docker registry and saves it to our system. So now we can use the Docker images command to see a list of all our images on our system. So Docker images. And there you now see we got two. We got the hello world, which we just ran a few seconds ago, and now we have the busybox one. Okay, next we're gonna use a command called docker run to create a container based on our busybox image. So docker run and the image name busybox. Not very exciting. You might be saying to yourself, it didn't work. Well, no error message. Well, it did work. And when you use the docker run command, a Docker client finds the image, in our case, busybox, loads up the container, and runs a command in that container. When we ran docker run busybox, we didn't provide a command. So the container booted up, ran an empty command, and then quickly exited. In a way, that's a drag, right? But in another way, that's pretty exciting. Because could you imagine booting up a VM, starting it that quickly? So you can just see how quickly containers can boot up and run stuff. So this time, we'll get a little output. We're going to use the same command, docker run busybox, but this time say echo hello from busybox. And this time we'll get a little output. So it's going to run this command right before the container goes away. There you go. Little action there. Okay, so we're going to learn two more commands. One is a docker ps, and this command shows all the containers that are currently running. So before I run this command, think to yourself, are we going to see any output, or is it going to be blank? Correct, blank, because all of the containers, we don't have any containers currently running. Now, if you want some further proof that we have been running containers and that there's been no errors, and we actually have started the busybox container up twice and just terminate it, we could run with the A, and that shows you containers that have ran, and you can see their names. just a name is created automatically. So you can see that we ran one 3 minutes ago and exit. These all exited. Hello world exited 10 minutes ago, 3 minutes ago, and there we go. And then this one, the last one, 0 minutes ago. See, now 2 minutes ago. So that's pretty cool, right? Yes. Say yes. All right. So that's all pretty good. Let's learn a little more information about our Docker run command. Docker run dash IT busybox sh. This says interactive with TTY, and this gives the command of shelling it out. In the past, this has not worked in Docker. It just hangs when I run it from, it does not work in the PowerShell ISE. It just hangs. But I'm going to try it. And if not, if it hangs, I'll stop it from hanging and then run it from a command prompt where it generally does work. So I'm going to run this command. So let's see what happens. Yeah, you see it's just hanging. We should be getting a prompt and be inside the busybox container. So I'm going to say stop. I'm going to go and open up a command prompt. As administrator. And then cd Docker labs clear, and then say Docker, if I can type Docker run dash IT busybox shell. Somewhere we made a mistake. Oh, I got Docker rub. There we go. Now, all right, so see now you can see we're kind of shelled in to the container here. So this is a Linux container, so it's like a Linux OS. So we'll type ls. That's a popular Linux command and it shows us some interesting stuff here. And we'll type uptime. Time, and then there we are showing us our uptime of our container there, 18 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and see, do I type exit here? No. Yes, exit. All right. I'm going to minimize this and go back to my PowerShell ISE. If you want to learn more about the Docker run command, of course we will as you go through this series, but you could also just type help and you get all kinds of all the parameters that are available to be used. So let's see if we can find interactive. So that's the one we just used, and if you look for the T, that should be something like TTY. So I notice I combined the two. So I could have ran this command. I could have wrote Docker run dash I dash T busybox sh. Or you can just combine them all the parameters together. Okay, another thing to learn is if we do a Docker images, you see we have 2 images out there, and we want to, even though they're pretty small, I think it's always good. We're done with these images, so we want to learn how to remove them. So that'd be, let's do a Docker ps-a, and these are all the ones that I've ran to clean up after ourselves evolving containers. So you can see we have the containers that we ran and have exited. but they're still out there. So what we want to do is remove those containers. So if I, for example, if I remove this one right here, it's the first one, I'll just copy this up here, Control C, so it's on my clipboard, and paste, and run this command. And now that container should be gone. And you can see that it is. Now I could have also, to make it, see I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 4 now. You know, I could copy paste each 4 more times. That could get a little old. I could also take this one here, replace it with this one. And I could also then take this one and run it like this. Notice it's telling me that I can't remove a running container. So I would have to, I believe I can do an F on that. Let's see. Oh, it got rid of this one. This one must have been running earlier. But you can, now if I run, you can see I have 2 left. So this is pretty useful. And you learn about the F. Okay, that was good for deleting 1 or 2 containers. If I want to delete a bunch, so imagine we have several here, not just 3. What I could do a dark docker rm, and then look at this command. If I just run this command all by itself, it only returns the container ID. So if I combine that with docker rm, it will list through these and delete all these at once. So now if I do docker psa, I don't have any containers. So that ends our first session. I think it was a good one. And we'll continue our journey with Docker containers and Kubernetes. Thanks for watching.